Hello everybody, my name is Taylor Baucom and this is my genetic presentation on maple syrup urine disease, or MSUD. This is the genetic disease that I spent the last 8 weeks researching and learning more about, so I'm really excited to share more knowledge about what I learned and share the research that I found really interesting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Here's a quick table of contents just to outline exactly how the PowerPoint presentation is going to go. So we're going to start with what is maple syrup urine disease, and we're really going to take a look at it in depth. Then we're going to focus in on the genes responsible, MSUD on a molecular level, and then we'll look at the inheritance pattern of MSUD, as well as a pedigree that I made back in week 3 outlining the mode of inheritance of MSUD. Next, we'll move on to genetic testing. And lastly, something that I found to be really important is the diet for individuals who are afflicted with maple syrup urine disease. So let's start. Maple syrup urine disease, what is it exactly? So maple syrup urine disease is a rare genetic amino acid metabolic disorder. And it afflicts around 1 in 185,000 people globally, and is slightly more rare in the United States at 1 in 198,000 people. And so you're probably wondering, maple syrup urine disease, that's a pretty unique name. Where did that come from? That actually comes from one of the symptoms that the individuals afflicted with this genetic disease show. So an individual that has MSUD is going to have very sweet smelling urine. It's going to smell almost similar to that of maple syrup. And that's exactly where the name comes from. It comes from the patient showing that symptom of very sweet smelling, sweet aroma like urine. And so let's get into a little bit about what exactly is MSUD, since it is an amino acid / metabolic disorder. So we'll start at the beginning. We have 3 essential proteins that are broken down into branched chain amino acids in the body, which are then yielded via an enzyme complex to energy and growth that the body uses. And so those 3 essential proteins are valine, leucine, and isoleucine. And they're broken down into branched chain amino acids. These branched chain amino acids then go through an enzyme complex, and like I said, it yields energy and growth for the human body. Individuals with maple syrup urine disease are deficient in that enzyme complex. So what happens, instead of those branched chain amino acids being broken down further, they rise in the bloodstream and can reach toxic levels for individuals. And so if MSUD is left untreated, the symptoms that a patient can show are vomiting, feeding difficulties, and if it reaches certain toxic levels of amino acids in the bloodstream, it can result in organ damage or even death if not properly treated. So MSUD in depth, like I said, it is a metabolic amino acid disorder. And the way that this happens is there's a mutation on one of 3 genes that are responsible for the enzyme complex that are responsible for breaking down branched chain amino acids from valine, isoleucine, and leucine. And that enzyme complex specifically is called branched chain keto acid dehydrogenase. That's the specific enzyme complex responsible for that. And so let's take a look at the genes responsible for MSUD. So we have 3 genes, like I previously stated, and those genes are BCK-DHA, BCK-DHB, and DBT. And it only requires a mutation on one of those genes in order for the entire enzyme complex to not work efficiently. So taking a closer look at the genes and kind of their part when it comes to making the enzyme complex, BCK-DHA is responsible for subunit alpha in the E1 complex. BCK-DHB is responsible for subunit beta in the E1 complex, and there are 2 subunits per each gene. So there are 2 alpha subunits and there are 2 beta subunits, and these subunits will come together to form the E1 component of that enzyme. And then next we have DBT, which is responsible for transactylase, and it is solely the E2 component. So when the E1 component is formed and the E2 component are formed, they come together to form that enzyme complex. And looking at the genes responsible for MSUD on a molecular level, we have BCK-DHA, which is found on chromosome 19 on the long arm at position 13.2. And next we have BCK-DHB, which is found on chromosome 6, also on the long arm at position 14.1. And then lastly, we have DBT, which is on chromosome 1, which is on the short arm this time, and it's found at position 21.2. So for this slide, I found this graphic, and it really breaks down exactly what happens for an individual that is afflicted with MSUD and the enzyme that's affected. So like I said, we have those three essential proteins, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, and they are then converted into their metabolic intermediates. These intermediates are then, in a normal human being, would be converted into energy and growth for the human body. But in an individual with MSUD, that enzyme defect kind of halts everything, and they stay in that branched chain amino acid like state. And so they don't get the products that they need in regards to energy and growth. And on this side, it breaks it down a little further in regards to MSUD. It's a little simpler to follow. So on the left, we have an individual that is a normal, healthy individual. It shows where that protein comes from, and the protein is broken down into amino acids, and then there are two different categories of amino acids. We have branched chain amino acids, and then we have other amino acids. These branched chain amino acids then go through the enzyme complex, and then that enzyme complex yields energy and growth. In an individual with MSUD, it starts the same, the protein from food and from muscles, which are broken down into amino acids. And these amino acids are then classified as branched chain amino acids or other amino acids that are smaller. But this time, it can't go through that enzyme complex due to that enzyme complex not working properly as a result of a mutation from one of those three genes. So this results in a buildup of branched chain amino acids and other substances in the body, which leads to further health problems for the individual. The mode of inheritance for MSUD is an autosomal recessive pattern, and here are some more of the prevalence regarding MSUD. It's like I stated previously, 1 in 185,000 individuals globally, 1 in 198,000 individuals in the United States, and for the old order of Mennonites, it's significantly higher at 1 in 358 individuals, and it's thought to be the reason of genetic drift, populations bottlenecking, and other genetic substances and formulas that are responsible for that being so prevalent in that population. So next we have a pedigree that I made back in week 3 following 4 generations, and we have 4 individuals that are afflicted with maple syrup urine disease, and that's denoted by that red color. So I'll give you a chance just to look at that. And then next we have maple syrup urine disease and genetic testing. So currently in the United States, all newborns are screened for maple syrup urine disease after birth. And we also have some alternative methods that can be used in order to test for MSUD. The first is a blood sample that can be utilized to review the genes responsible for MSUD. The second is measuring the amount of branched chain amino acids in the blood, and if it's at a very high amount, they can do further testing in order to identify specifically if it is MSUD. Third, we have an enzyme test, which looks at the body's ability to break down those 3 essential proteins. And then lastly, there is a test for pregnant individuals if they have an offspring that is afflicted with MSUD. They can undergo this test via amniocentesis or CVS, and it's going to look at the DNA of the fetus to see if they are prone to MSUD. And then lastly, we have the MSUD diet. So since this is a metabolic disorder, an amino acid disorder, diet affects individuals with MSUD. So what I found is individuals with MSUD avoid high protein foods. Fruits and vegetables are allowed, and they're normally encouraged. Regular breads and pastas are also allowed as long as they don't have any ingredients that are going to increase that protein outtake. And then something that I found was interesting is weighing and measuring food out is a normal action for people with MSUD to ensure there's no extra protein in their diet, so they keep accountability of all the protein that they're consuming. And then lastly, metabolic dietitians are on hand to help around the world. So if you or someone you know has a metabolic disorder, please feel free to reach out to them. They are professionals and they can help you out in the best way possible. And lastly, here are my references. Thank you so much for following me with my presentation and viewing my presentation, and have a great day.